So we have here Jessie Bustamante. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, and I apologize if I'm not. She is a fundraising coach with Get Fully Funded, and we're going to raise some money. What do you say? Today we're going to raise some money with Jessie. So Jessie puts the fun in fundraising. She brings her energy and her enthusiasm for fundraising and all that she does. Jessie is a fearless fundraiser by day and by night. She is currently a fundraiser herself, a fundraising coach, fundraising instructor, and in her spare time, she's volunteering at a local animal rescue, saving lives. Jessie has dedicated her professional and personal career to serving others and helping homeless animals. Jessie has been fundraising since around 2010 when she fell into the profession after she was asked to serve on a fund development committee, but thought she heard fun rather than fund development committee. So it was a fund development committee. Very interesting. Well, she ultimately put the fun in fund development, and she's been hooked ever since. She's had roles in nonprofits, including executive director, major gifts officer, vice president of development, and chief advancement officer. At the end of the day, Jessie is committed to raising more money so that nonprofits can do more, save more, and make our communities a better place to live, work, and play. She is an advocate for the voiceless and knows that this is her forever career. I'm going to hand it over to Jessie.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay?
Can you get a little closer to the computer?
Absolutely. Is this better?
Much better, I believe. Kristen, yes? Good?
Thumbs up from me.
Okay, super.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm so grateful that you're here and taking the time for this. And I have to also say to everyone here, thank you for all that you do. I really appreciate all the very important work that you do for our community, for our animals and everything. So thank you for being here, for taking this time, and for all that you do. So let's get into some fundraising. So you are here, you're in the right place. If you're thinking you need to raise some more money, you need to grow your programs, you want to hire staff, you want to pay yourself, maybe you haven't mastered fundraising yet and you would love it to be easier. So Bree, if we can have our first poll, I'd love to make sure we've got the right people here. And I would just like to know, which of these do you all want most? So which of these do you all want most? Hopefully we can work through some of these in the next little bit, but would love to make sure that we are all in the right place here.
All right, so the poll is on your screen. All right, so do you need to raise more money to grow programs? Would love to hire staff or pay yourself? What a concept. And haven't yet mastered fundraising and want it to be easier. Sorry for the typo.
Yeah, probably my fault.
Yeah. No. It's my input into GoToWebinar. However, I think we all get the point. A lot of folks have voted. I'm going to give you just a few more seconds to get those final clicks in on your screen. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. You got 3, 2, 1, and we're closing. All right, let's share those results. So which of these do you most want? 63% said need to raise more money to grow those programs. 16% said that they would love to hire staff or pay themselves, or 21% haven't yet mastered fundraising and just want it to be easier.
Perfect. All right, well, I guarantee that everyone who filled out this poll is in the right place. So I'm glad you're here. I always want to raise more money to grow programs. I always want to make sure that an organization has the right staff and that we are paying the founders, the individuals doing the work. And if you haven't yet mastered fundraising and want it to be easier, we're going to give you some tips today. So you're in the right place. I am going to go fast and furious. I have a lot of information to share, but I'm going to make sure in the last 15 minutes we have time to answer questions. I also want to add that I also did join the Community Cats Facebook group as well. And so I will make sure I put a note in there later today. So if any of your questions weren't answered, please do engage with me there so I can help you out. If it will let me get to the next slide. All right. So what you will get today, we're going to talk about why your current fundraising might not be bringing in the money you need. We're going to talk about a 3-part formula for successful fundraising. We're going to talk about the 1-10-1000 rule, and we're going to talk about ideas for things you can do today. So a little about me. This is a picture of me. When we do the Q&A just in a little bit, you'll also see my face as well. I am a coach with Get Fully Funded. This is also a picture of me and one of my adoptable dogs, Robbie, through a rescue that I volunteer with. I fundraise professionally. I do it personally. I just find that wherever I go, somehow I'm helping someone figure out how to raise more money. I've been doing this for about 15 years now. I love the thrill of getting in front of someone, maybe when they have the means to financially give a donation, and I can find an organization that needs their support and it's a fit. So I kind of call myself a matchmaker at times. I just take money and give it to those who need it. I'm also a fundraising instructor. I'll talk about that in a second. I'm an animal lover and I support a variety of different animal nonprofits. I'm in many rescue groups locally here in my community. And if someone needs fundraising help, I'm the first that jumps out and says, how can I help you? What do you need to do? How much money? And let's get this going. Sandy is the founder of Get Fully Funded. So what I am a coach for, this organization, is her brainchild. This is a picture of her. She is a phenomenal fundraising expert. A lot of what I'm sharing today, I learned from her, and I've even got some tidbits from her that I'll share as well. We have 14 employees and fundraising experts on our team, and I'll show you in just a little bit how many animal nonprofits that Get Fully Funded supports. It is definitely the bread and butter of the organization. And this is me and my crew, my rescue family. My white little cattle dog pit bull mix, her name is Hope. My American Bully Husky Shepherd, his name is Hulk. Thought this picture was funny. This was from March of 2022 and we adopted them. And then March of 2023, we can barely carry them. So I very much am just an advocate for animals. Hope and the white, of course, they're both from a rescue. Hope was found in a box and Hulk was found in really less than ideal conditions, but they're now living really great lives. And so I am very much in this community in all ways. This is me volunteering actually with a local rescue. So it is a senior rescue. Yes, that is me at an adoption event trying to calm a German Shepherd. That is me on the bottom with my Shar-Pei mix Henry, who actually recently passed away. And that's me with some family and friends, just getting some dogs socialized at essentially an art fair. So I really enjoy just being involved in the rescue world, not raising money, but actually walking the talk and making sure I understand the work, how important spay and neutering is and everything, for, in my opinion, regardless of age and many other factors. So here's my story. I was not born with fundraising skills. This is a picture of my mom and I, my favorite picture in the world. I was not born thinking I was going to be a fundraiser, but I've always had a love for animals. This is one of my dogs who passed away a few years ago. I've always grown up around dogs. I can't say around cats, but I love all things on 4 legs, 3 legs, 2 legs, you name it. I love things who can't advocate or talk for themselves, and I want to be their voice. And I did not sign up for fundraising at Career Day. This is me at graduation, about, 20 years ago now. I actually studied Spanish, so I am fluent in Spanish, which has been helpful, but I had no idea it would lead to my fundraising world. Where I learned it, these are a variety of places that I've worked at. I worked at a community center for individuals who are learning English, American Lung Association in the health world, Moisture House, an organization building religious communities around the globe. So I kind of really fell into this. But since then, with Get Fully Funded, these are a lot of the different animal organizations that we have supported. I'd say about 90% of these I have helped as well to figure out how can they raise more money. So I hope you know that when I'm sharing all of this, a lot of this has been shared with all of these individuals as well, and we know this will be helpful to you. And the last thing I'll say about myself is today, I'm actually all about the fundraising space. I'm actually now an instructor for UC San Diego teaching fundraising. I'm fundraising full-time, a coach with Get Fully Funded, volunteering my life fundraising. So I am all about getting money for those who need it. So let's dive in. Let's talk about fundraising. Got this big piggy bank because donations are always welcome. So when you raise more money, you can save more lives. I will also point out that in one of the handouts you have on the sidebar, there's actually one called 4-legged fundraising. If you've not pulled that handout out, if that would be helpful, this might be one of the first things you want to take note of for that handout. When you raise more money, you can save more lives. This is the truth. But we also hear, why is fundraising so hard? We need help. I get it. Fundraising is something I will hopefully continue my career in for a long time to come. It is never easy. You always have to figure out what's the right strategy, who's the right person, how do I do this? And don't worry, we're going to give you some tips and tricks right now. So your fundraising problem may be, maybe you're doing it backward, chasing nickels and dimes, you're doing sole source fundraising. So Bree, if we can get another poll up here, would love to know if any of these problems are resonating with anyone. Do any of these sound familiar to you? And I will dive into all of these shortly as well in case you're curious or confused about any of them.
All right, go ahead and click on that screen in front of you. So which problems sound familiar? Doing it backward, chasing nickels and dimes, or sole source funding? All right, another typo on here. Clearly I need to be more careful when I enter these into the system. All right, folks, get those clicks in. See, over half of you have participated. I'm going to give it just a few more seconds here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that poll, get those clicks in. We got 3, 2, 1, and close. All right, so let's go ahead and share those results. All right, so 8% of folks said that doing it backwards sounded pretty familiar. 63% of folks said chasing nickels and dimes. And then 30% said doing sole source funding.
All right. Thank you all for sharing that. If any of you have these problems, or maybe even more than one, know that that is okay. Fundraising is all about learning. It's a continuous process, and hopefully you're going to walk away with at least one idea to hopefully make at least one of these different or make it better. So thank you all for participating, and now we're going to jump into the meat of this. All right, so sole source funding. What this means is basically that you have one individual, one grant that's helping you stay afloat. One company, one business, maybe even one fundraising activity. Sole source fundraising can keep you stuck. It can limit how many animals you help. It may knock you out of the running for grants. I don't know if you've ever tried applying for a grant and they ask, well, who are your main funders? And if you just have one, that's really not going to be as appealing as if you had more diversified funding. What more diversified funding means is that you have individuals giving, you have some grants, maybe even some businesses donating. You have a diverse funding stream. So we want to help you get away from that sole source fundraising. So the idea of underfunded versus fully funded. Organizations who are underfunded might be focused on the fundraisers or the activities themselves, whereas fully funded is focused on donors. And what that means is really understanding, what are these donors looking for? How do I cultivate these donors so I can raise more money? How do I make sure that my communication is donor-centric? We're going to talk a lot about all these today. Underfunded is making decisions based on checkbook, or based on the checkbook, whereas fully funded is making decisions based on the vision. Are you focused on the fact that you need $100 today, or are you focused on all the lives that you want to save in the future? Underfunded is living from one cash infusion to the next, and fully funded is having a steady stream of revenue all year long. Underfunded, as I mentioned, that sole source revenue, and fully funded is that diversified revenue. Underfunded is having a poverty mentality, whereas fully funded is committed to do whatever it takes to be successful. Underfunded is settles for whatever they get, and fully funded is not good with the status quo and finds a way to overcome it. And underfunded is all about the money, very transactional. Thank you for your gift, or thank you for your donation that you made for this auction item. Thank you for your gift that you made to spay or neuter this one animal. But being fully funded is all about the relationship and future donations. That one individual who funded someone to be spay or neutered, have you ever had a conversation with them about what else they could do? And sharing your larger vision with them. So these are a lot of things we're going to talk about. We want you to have a fully funded mentality. Oh, the myth of this, the shoestring budget. So some people might even say, I've heard someone say, we're working on a shoestring budget, we're doing okay. Well, let me tell you that shoestrings eventually snap. They can only go so far. And we really want to make sure that you have enough funding that you're not only covering your programs, but your overhead too. When I say overhead, I'm talking about keeping the lights on, keeping the doors open, keeping gas in the car. It's not always just about raising money to make sure that you can keep your programs going, but it's about making sure you have money to do everything you want to do. So it is time to do something. I don't know if these little kitten faces don't motivate you, but whenever I see this picture, they're looking at me like, let's go. So what fundraising is donor focused. When I am raising money, I am listening to people tell me what are their passions, what do they want to give money to, why, what motivates them. I am listening. As a fundraiser, I often tell people we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and when we're fundraising, we should be listening, listening, listening for the right fit. We're looking for partnership opportunities. We're looking for transformational opportunities for the donor and the organization. So fundraising is, as we're going to talk, actually, I'll move forward. Fundraising is not, it's not begging. It's not arm twisting. It's not selling people or hitting people up. It's not robbing a bank like this individual in the graphic either. Fundraising is about making sure you are doing the right thing at the right time. Getting ahead of myself, I won't say too much, but we are not going to be begging people anymore. We're going to be listening to find the right people who can help us out. So a successful fundraising formula, it is the right people at the right time with the right message can make a donation. If I leave you with anything today, I'd hope it would be this. We're looking for the right people. How do we find the right people who want to give to us? How are we asking at the right time? We're not too late. We're not too early. We are right when the motivation's high. How are we sharing the right message? We're going to dive into all of this right now. So the right people. When I am first starting with an organization or a rescue, a spay neuter clinic, whatever it may be, I'm trying to figure out who are the people in your community already that are supporting you? Who are your board of directors? Who are your volunteers? Who are people that you are paying bills to? These are all people already in your network that are potential donors. And yes, I'm going to say it again, your volunteers can also be your donors. I know many people shy away thinking, well, I can't ask them to give. They're already giving their time. Those are the most passionate people who fully understand what you're doing. So if you are not on this call thinking, I could never ask volunteers, I'm here to change your opinion. Volunteers are the best donors, not only for themselves, but I guarantee they can bring their friends and family with them. So my next slide to show these people and a bunch of money is because hypothetically, what if this individual in red or in white or this gentleman in the beige in this photo are your current volunteers, current board member? These are all the people they surround themselves with. They have family, they have friends, they have individuals that might pray with them, that might shop with them, that might spend their Sundays together. They might watch football together. These are all people who could possibly be interested in your organization just because of one single person who's already bought into what you do. It just takes a few people to really make waves and make ripple effect. But what could get in your way? We've got the passion myth. Some people think, well, if they're not as passionate as I am, they're not going to give. Absolutely, total myth, does not matter. If someone cares about the work that you are doing, they could be inclined to give. They do not need to have the same passion and motivation that you do. I am not a founder or a director of an organization doing what you do, but I know how important it is because of my own dogs, because of my family dogs, because of my family and friends' cats, whatever it may be. I am interested as well. I just may not be as passionate about you, and that's okay. Too broad of an appeal. We're going to talk about messaging in a bit, but you really want to make sure that when you're asking for money, it is specific and you've got a really great ask and you know what you need. An inconsistent outreach. It is so important to make sure that if you identify someone or an organization who can be a potential donor, that you have consistent outreach. This means that you're making sure that you're staying in touch, you're staying top of mind, because you know what the truth is, if you're out of sight, out of mind, it does not mean they're being rude. They are not ignoring you. They just have a lot going on, and we've got to make sure that you stay top of mind. So what is your ideal donor? So this is something for you to figure out. If you currently have some donors right now, find out any demographic information you have about them. Are they primarily females who live within 10 miles of your organization? Are these men? Are they young individuals? Are you in a tech community in San Francisco and you've got a lot of innovative minds there? Who are the individuals already giving to you? And let's try to figure out who your ideal donor is. It can be, are they male or female? What ages are they? What's their values? What do they do for fun? How do they spend their time? How do they spend their money? These are all things to think about, and you can do this by diving into either your current donors, your current volunteers, because those are also phenomenal donors. You can look at your board of directors, look at your staff, look who helps you when you need it in a pinch. Who are those people? We're trying to figure out who are the ones who are passionate about your work. And then the big question with this is, where do you easily find them and in large numbers? So hypothetically, if you know that you have individuals maybe who are from a very large faith community, how do you get in front of that faith community? How do you get in with them? How do you attend a meeting? If it's primarily individuals of family ages, where are these families hanging out? Are there any large gatherings coming up that you can go to? Is there an organization that maybe people subscribe to? Is there a school you can speak at? How do you get in front of these people, and how do you find them in large numbers? And if you don't even know where to start, like I said, look at your volunteers, look at your board, look who the people are that are currently donating, and try to figure out from there who your perfect demographic is. And then what's most important next is the right message. This picture always makes me chuckle whenever I share it. I'm going to assume by now that many of you know that this is the Cheesecake Factory. And our founder from Sandy from Get Fully Funded loves to use this example because she's been to about 20 or 30. And what the best part of the Cheesecake Factory is that they always lead with the most delicious thing. So if you walked into a Cheesecake Factory, the minute you walk in, boom, you look at these cheesecakes. And I can tell you that I am not a cheesecake connoisseur. However, when I look at these, I go right for the, oh my gosh, there's chocolate cheesecake. I need that. This immediately gets my attention before I've gone to the hostess stand, before I've even asked for a table, before I've sat down. I am already drooling about the Cheesecake Factory. If we had endless time, I'd probably do a poll to ask you what your favorite cheesecake is, but I won't, because I know we've all got some desserts that we like. And the point of this is check out their message. The minute you walk in, they hit you with something good and delicious. And now I'm hungry. So things that could get in the way, being too self-centered. This is not about you. This is not about me. This is not about we. This is about the donor. And we need to make sure that when we are fundraising, we are always keeping the donor and their best interests in mind. How do we get the donor's attention? What is of interest to them? The next thing is existence versus impact. I don't want anyone here to focus on how long you've been around or the reason you are so important. I get that, but we need to talk about impact. How many lives have you saved? Can you show me a picture of an animal that you've helped in distress after they have litter after litter and they're in horrible shape, but you help them, you make sure they get on the road to recovery, maybe even into a better home or more safe in the home they're at. Share the impact. I have seen some phenomenal photos of spay and neuter clinics when they have animals lined up of all the animals they spayed and neutered that day, and it is powerful. And I've seen pictures of animals that are brought in a crate looking very disheveled, and the owner says, I can't afford any more litters. I need you to help me. I have no money. And just sharing that story of how critical it is that that animal needs help right then, right there. We're going to talk about messaging in a little bit. Oh, and jargon breath. Your story should set your donor's hair on fire. And let me tell you, jargon is a flame retardant. When we use jargon, when we use slang or too big or too wordy, when we're too wordy ourselves, we lose people. I don't know about any of you, but if you've ever read something and it's like, here at APLD, we love the spay and neuter clinics, whatever it is, we love to TNR and all these words. I know there's many more in the rescue world, but people who give you money may not know all the jargon. So no jargon. Be clear, be concise, and make sure you're sharing your message as efficiently, as rapidly as you can. Here's an examples of things we're not going to do. So what does this really say? Just going to give you a few seconds to read this. What this is really saying, of birds of a feather flock together. If you read this, how many of you would have turned this away and said, what in the world? I don't have time for this. But if I told you birds of a feather flock together, I guarantee you all would have been, oh yeah, we get it. So what's with these big words? We don't need these. How about this one? Again, I'll give you a few seconds to read this. What does this really say? I know we've got some pretty intelligent people here who are like, I know what this means, but you know what? The general public might not. This means you can teach an old dog essentially new tricks, but we know that you can. And you know what? Your donors you do not want to confuse them. So let's not sit here and give them all this jargon, all these words. How about this one? Give you a few seconds to read this on the screen. Sounds a little scary to me. This means cleanliness is next to godliness. So again, think about the words that you are using. If you had to sit here and say, hang on, Jessie, I'm trying to figure out what it says, do not make your donors do that. They don't have time. We do not want them to sit here and get frustrated or confused about the words you're using. So now, speaking of message, how do we tell the best message? Well, we're going to find your core number. So I want you to sit here and think big picture. If you were to think about every single expense you had last year, every spay neuter clinic, all the outreach, marketing you had to do, whether it's paying yourself, paying staff, transportation costs, anything you got, I want you to think of that, and then we're going to divide that from last year by the total units of service to get the core number. Again, I know I'm flying through this fast. I encourage you to ask questions in about 20 minutes when we get to that. I encourage you to post in the Facebook group. I'm here to help you figure this out. Here is a very generic example. Again, we're going to make sure you used all of your expenses. Do not leave any overhead costs out. When I say overhead, I am talking about what's keeping the lights on, what's literally helping you open the door. If you even have a door to a space, all of that's overhead. So let's say hypothetically you had $50,000 in expenses from 2023. And let's say you had 6,525 days of care. What that means is you figured out how many animals you helped and you figured out how many days they were in your care. So yes, there's more than 6,500 of days in care in a year. I get that. This is talking about each individual animal. So if we were to divide 50,000 by 6,525, that is $7.66 per day, for example, per kitten. Imagine that ask of telling people, well, what is it, when someone says, well, what does it really cost to do what you do? It costs $7.66 per day, per animal, per kitten, per dog, whatever it may be that you are helping. Finding your core number is one of the strongest ways to make an ask. I'm going to share, I think I got 2 examples coming up right now to really show this into action. So again, if you have questions about this, please ask after, please share in the Facebook group. I know it will be different for everyone. So here's a phenomenal example that Humane Society of Southeast Missouri, a group that I have worked with, fully funded, has worked with for many years. $6.20 a day to feed, shelter, and care for a kitten. This is how much it costs. And they've literally used this in campaigns. They've used this when they're asking for money, in social media posts. When someone says, well, how much does it really cost? This is what they've used. It costs $6.20 a day to feed, shelter, and care for a kitten. And the best example I want to share is, how about monthly donors? I'm sure we could do another poll right now. I'd get 100% yes of how many of you wish that you had monthly donors. And by monthly donors, I mean individuals giving month after month. So using a number like the one we had just on the last slide, it costs $6.20 for 1 day of care. Imagine if you had donors that gave $6.20 every month for 12 months. That will add up fast. They want to go higher? Sure. It's $24.80 for the first 4 days of care. It's $43.40 for 1 week of care. It's $124 for an entire stay worth of care. In my opinion, these numbers are powerful. What is your core number? What does it actually cost to do what you do per day? It might not be per day. It might be per animal. It might be per clinic. It might be per informational session, whatever it is that you are having, that you are hosting. A core number can be so powerful. Donors love it. Put yourself, for example, in a donor's shoe right now, and you're being asked, hey, I'm trying to help more animals. I'm trying to prevent more unwanted litters in this world right now. I know we're all in over crisis population of animals. But for $6.20 a month, giving up one Starbucks a month, you can help us out. That's very tangible. That's very reasonable. And for those who have more means, $124 is also very tangible. Bump them from 100 to 124 because you know what your number is. So what would make this one better? If together we save 4,500 more kittens this year than last, we can end the killing of kittens in Los Angeles. You're probably guessing from what I just said, but where's the core number? If together we each give $6.20 per month, we can save 4,500 more kittens this year than last. How much more powerful is that? This picture, this imagery, phenomenal. The words on this, perfect. The only thing missing, that core number. So the big question for all of you is, what is that delicious thing you're asking people to support? So we're going back to that Cheesecake Factory. Before they even sit down at their table, before they ask for a table, they already know what they want for dessert. What are you asking people to support? What is it? Is it making sure that there is more healthy animals in your community? Find some pictures of before and after of some animals that literally just set someone's hairs on fire and say, oh my gosh, we cannot let this happen anymore in my community. What is the delicious thing you are asking for? And yes, everyone has something delicious. So we've got the right people. We talked about the right messaging. Now we've got some of the right time. So this is a picture of two individuals. Looks like this gentleman is a little nervous over here. The woman seems really calm. And with this, in my mind, I'm going to assume they're probably on some kind of date, or she is asking them a very serious question. And I put this on here. This makes me laugh because the right time, fundraising can also be similar to dating. You are not going to show up on a first date in your wedding dress. At least I hope you don't. And men, please do not bring a ring on any kind of date, a first date, a second date, maybe a third, I don't know. But anyways, not in the first time. If you're meeting someone for the first time, you're not going to ask them for everything. You're not going to ask them for their hand in marriage. You're not going to ask them for $20,000. No, you're going to get to know them. So a big thing I talk about with fundraising is making sure you're getting to know the donors so that you're asking at the right time. Have you been listening with your two ears and less talking with your one mouth? Do you know what they're interested in? Do you know what they want to give to? And do you have a really good ask? It does not need to be right away. I would definitely say to strike when the iron's hot and keep them engaged and keep them excited, but don't ask right away and don't ruin an opportunity. I have to, of course, throw another picture of individuals on a wedding topper because when it is the right time, it's magical. Marriage, in my opinion, is equally as good as getting a really big gift. From experiencing both, I would say they're pretty equal. They're both really great. So again, I just put this on here to show you that, yes, fundraising is kind of like dating someone, getting to know someone new. Whether it's for marriage, it could be a friend, a business partner. It takes time. And I want to make sure that when you're making the right gift, you are ready. Who is making the ask? What for? Did we listen to them? Do we know it's aligned? How do you know it's going to be a yes? If you don't know, don't ask yet. Keep asking questions to make sure it is the perfect fit. So also with the right time too, it's important to know about seasons because that could have an effect, or different times of the year. For example, I currently personally live in Arizona, and in the summertime, we don't do anything major. I'm sure if anyone's familiar with the West Coast or on this call from Arizona right now, you are probably laughing with me right now. But basically between May and September, we shut down. There are way less people here because it is hot, hot, hot. Do not encourage you to come during that time. But when people come back in the fall or the winter, they're like, all right, the weather is beautiful. Let's get going. Let's make a difference. So it's all about knowing when is the right time. Is it a season? Is it around an event? Is there something in your community that happens every year? Are there also individuals? Are there individuals going through a hard time right now or going through a big celebratory time? Be mindful of what your donors are going through as well, because we want to make sure when we're asking, it's the right time for all of these reasons. That's why it's so important to listen to make sure you're making the ask at the right time. The fundraising cycle the fundraising cycle when it comes to donations, it keeps going. It's all about thanking, updating and asking, and this never, ever ends. It says retention happens here between the thank and the update. Retention is just as important as asking. And if you're wondering, what do you mean by retention? I mean keeping these individuals engaged. It is so important that at all times, your donors and even prospective donors, current donors, know what's happening in your organization, and there should not be any asks involved in that retention period. I'll go into that in a few more slides around finding the balance of updating thinking between asking, because there is some get fully funded science, I would say, to make sure that before you make an ask, individuals have to know what's been happening with their money. So it's updating, ask, and thinking. It is continuous. The minute I make an ask someone or I receive money, I am already sitting here saying, okay, what am I going to do now? How do I thank them? How do I keep them engaged for next year? I'm already thinking about next year the minute I have a check in my hand, possibly even before. So with this, the relationship account, it's all about maintaining a positive balance. Every time, for example, you share a story, you share a video, you are depositing into the account, you're building up this account. And anytime there's an ask, you are making a withdrawal. So for if any of you have kind of a finance mind, think of it that this is like accounting, this is our finance right here. You've got to put something into the account. You've got to share a good story. You've got to share the impact, share a success story, share what's happening, share a sad story. That's okay too. Keep making those deposits, because when you make an ask, it's a withdrawal, and you want to make sure it's the best withdrawal possible. So things that could get in your way: desperation mode. I'm sure we've all been there. I have too. Ooh, the ick factor. I've heard people say, well, I know who to ask because they know so-and-so and so-and-so and they have money. So I'm going to ask them because their grandfather's rich. Oh, that to me feels so icky. Where's the connection? Where's the personal factor? Let's not ask someone just because we know they have money. Let's ask someone when we actually know it's a connection. And the next thing is ignoring the relationship. So I talked about this with the piggy bank. I'm going to talk about this in the next slide too. Do not ignore the relationship. Just because someone made an ask does not mean you can ignore them for the next 12 months. Heck no. Keep putting, keep investing into that account, keep putting into that piggy bank, keep making sure that you're building upon that relationship. So the 3-to-1 ratio. You should be asking for every 3 times you are communicating. So this is about what I mentioned with the piggy bank too. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Here's what we're doing with your money. Here's a story I want to tell you recently have happened. Here's a family that just reached out to us, and because of you, we can say yes. Communicate, then make an ask. These communications, I don't know, depending on everyone's group is different. Maybe this is a once a week communication. Maybe this is once every 3 months. The average typical person does give a gift once a year, but you know what? Some give once a month. Some give whenever there's a need. So figure out what your donor needs and communicate 3 times as much as you're making an ask. The easiest way, in my opinion, to do this, have a generic newsletter that goes out with no ask. Once a month, share a story, a quick story. We are fast-paced people. We are not scrolling in our emails. What is a fast story that kind of with that delicious factor, the Cheesecake Factory, that will get people's attention quickly? Communicate some stories, share your impact, good, bad, ugly, share it, because it's reality and people want to know what you're doing with their money before you make another ask. So the key to build trust is people give to nonprofits they trust. People volunteer with nonprofits they trust. People recommend nonprofits they trust. How many of you have ever asked someone, hey, do you know someone who could come and fix this in my house? Hey, where do you go to get your clothes tailored? Hey, where do you go to get your hair done? You're looking for that trust that someone else has, right? Build that same trust with your nonprofit. Make sure people are referring you as the place to go to. So let's get practical. We're going to talk about fundraising strategies. So let's see, we want to stay away from nickel and diming. We want to stay away from sole source fundraising. We want to stay away from the same old thing. So Bree, for our final poll, if you don't mind putting it up, I'd love to know if people have right now a fundraising plan already.
Absolutely. Getting that poll question out there for everyone. One more time, let's go ahead and click on that screen. So your options are yes, it's in writing and we are following it, or kind of, but it's in my head. And then plan, we're supposed to have a plan. So which one is closest to you?
I feel like we need some Jeopardy music.
I know, something to fill the space, but we have over half of folks have voted already. I'm going to give everyone a little longer to go ahead and get those clicks in. We're going to go ahead and close out this poll. Got 3, 2, 1, and close. Let's go ahead and look at those results. So do you have a fundraising plan? 7% of folks said yes, it's in writing and we are following it. 57% of folks said kind of, but it's in my head. And 36% of folks said plan. We're supposed to have a plan.
Excellent. Good. Thank you all for sharing this. I'm going to share some, possibly a quick fundraising plan that you can use and some ideas to follow. And this is the last piece. I really appreciate everyone following along and sticking with me. So I hope you've gotten some good nuggets. So when I'm thinking of how to, at the most rapid, efficient way, create a plan, here are some things I keep in mind. So too many events where the community and wear your volunteers out. Choose one big signature event. That could be a fancy event, looks like a little fancy event, such as on this picture in this slide right here. It can be an auction. It can be a backyard event. It might be a talent show. It could be an adoption event that raises money. Pick something that raises money for you so that you can do it well. You're not going to wear people out. You're going to excite people, and they look forward to attending it year after year. You're going to look to apply for 10 grants. And I'll tell you in a second with the next slide that if you're like, I don't even apply for any grants, don't worry. But the 1-10-1000 rule is pick 10 grants to apply for. Schedule them out. Get a calendar going. Grants are different for everyone. Their grants are different from everyone. So find 10 that might be applicable to you. You can literally do some generic searches and figure out some grants for animal rescue, animal spay and neuter clinics. You can find them just simple Google searches. There is more formal grantware as well. Some of it's free, some of it costs money, but you can also find grant search databases. And with this, every grant is different, like I said. So this will take time because you're going to need someone to prep and put together the grants. And then the next one is 1,000 donors. Why you need 1,000 donors? There seems to be a sweet spot when fundraising gets easier. You'll start to see cool things happen. You'll have new major donors, new monthly donors. And look, if 1,000 donors seems daunting, if 10 grants seem daunting, double what you're doing right now. Let's start there. Are you doing no grants? Let's try for 2. Do you have 100 donors? Let's try for 200 donors. Double what you're doing. This one signature event, this 10 grants, this 1,000 donors, this is a sweet spot I want you all to get to. It will take time, but let's have a vision and let's try getting there. And if you're saying now, well, gosh, well, how do I even do this? What does this look like? Well, the last thing I have for you is a very tangible plan you can use. So let's do some quick fundraising math. We've got one signature event. We've got 10 grants at $2,500 each. We've got 1,000 donors at $50 each. That's $100,000. This is diversified funding. This is what funders are going to look for to know that you are doing your best to make sure that you will be sustainable by all means because you have money coming in from different places. And imagine this, what if you even add in a line for monthly giving? Gosh, imagine what that would do for your organization. So now what? Setting goals, write a plan, recruit help, get busy. And this I will share, getfullyfunded.com/plan. I know it's a little blurry on the screen, but this is actually a fundraising calendar that you can use. It's separated by the different months of the year. Plug in the grants you're gonna do, special events, individual donors, major gifts, plan things out. The best fundraisers do the best because they have a plan. And it can be as simple as this one on this screen right here. Put it on paper, share this with your volunteers, with your donors, let them know that you have a vision. And the last thing I have is to stay in touch. So Get Fully Funded has also our Facebook group. You're welcome to ask Facebook questions or fundraising questions at any time, and coaches like myself jump in. We've also got a free Giving Tuesday video series. We encourage you to grab your seat. And even following Get Fully Funded, we have weekly tips and inspiration coming out at all times. So
I love Get Fully Funded. I do. You are all fantastic, wonderful, amazing, and very animal welfare focused. So it's just really, really great. And also small grassroots nonprofit organizations. In
yes.
terms of the clients that you work with, what is the average annual budget of the organization?
I have seen organizations we've worked with from $50,000 to probably the most I've worked with is maybe $300,000. So they're typically smaller organizations. A lot of individual founders, meaning there's a client I work with in Florida, and she has essentially an animal rescue in her backyard on her property. So I see a lot of individuals who are starting it themselves and try to figure out how do they grow and how do they get out of their home onto a different plot of land or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. So this is a question I can relate with. So the person was like, I'm really looking forward to this presentation because I spend a lot of my time fundraising, but I'm not paying myself. And at what point, or should I expect to pay myself some money? Should I have that as a goal? When does that happen? And how do I kind of get rid of that negative feeling of like, oh, I'm just working so hard, fundraising, and it's just feel like you're never making any gains.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say there's essentially a timeline. It's not going to be at year 1 or at month 18. Every organization is different. But I will say is once you start building a fundraising plan and you build a budget, build that in. So if you, for example, if you're submitting a grant or you're sharing with the donor what you want to do, share a budget of what it looks like when you're fully funded and have that ready. If I can give myself, for example, $40,000 and I can raise 40,000, well, I can do this full time then, and we can double the amount of animals that we're serving. So in my opinion, it's kind of like those silly vision boards where you cut out things from a magazine and you put them on a board of what you want. Build a budget of what your vision is and share that. Share that with your board, share that with your volunteers. No one's going to be mad at you because you want to do this full time. They'll probably be grateful because people are worried, how is this going to continue if we don't have someone full time working here? So build a budget, share it. There's not a direct timeline, but if you're doing this full time already, then let's start sharing that with people that we need to raise this money. When I'm also, the caveat I'll say is when I'm raising money, I try not to focus on the people. I focus on the animals. If we have someone full time, we can serve this many animals. We can save this many more lives. We can help this many, our population in the community by cutting animals by X, whatever it may be, who are going to end up in shelters. So share what the impact's going to be. Don't focus on I need to raise money for my salary. Please don't ever do a fundraiser for your salary. Do it for the animals and build in what you need to cover your salary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, it is, there's the challenges about raising money for general operations, versus for something specific. There were definitely some questions in there about the core number. And does the core number need to be a low ticket, like $20 or less? Somebody was asking the question, if my spay neuter surgeries are $120 each, to spay neuter a cat, it's 120. So is that a core number? $120 to spay neuter a cat. Is that too expensive? Does that not work? So, how can it translate in a spay neuter world where our costs can be pretty prohibitive now?
Yeah. My goal is, well, every community is different. So I have worked with groups that are trying to get to somewhere around $100 number because that's what they want to share with their donors and they want people to give at that level. Making it as small as you can, for example, it just makes it tangible. Hey, giving up a Starbucks is going to help. So with spay and neuter, I'm not an expert on this, but I'm going to assume there's a lot of things that go into that. So let's think about, can we boil this down to how much it costs to make sure we have the tools so we can help every animal get what they need. And there might be volunteers or veterinarians donating their time or giving a breakdown. How much is it per hour? for someone to do this work. Every hour it will cost this, and every hour they can spay and neuter 3 animals, for example. So think of how do you even break it down further? What are the other costs, the other things incurred? Is there any transportation involved? Meaning, can the core number be around for this much money, it will help us get from point A to point B, for example, and your core number is focused on where you're trying to get to. So you can get creative with that core number. In my opinion, the lower it is, the more tangible it is, but know your audience. And if it is 117.56, then use that. And maybe if you cut that back by 4, it's if you can give this much, let's try a monthly donor, right? If you can give $25 a month, that means throughout the year, you personally will help 3 animals. So how do we break it down even maybe time-wise so that you're not focused on this one number, but that we can get people maybe to give throughout the year, and maybe they're sponsoring 1 animal throughout the year by breaking that down even further. So there's so many things we can dive into. I could spend hours on this doing examples, but think about who your audience is and what would resonate with them. And if it's 100, for example, cut it down by 12 months and what that would be.
So then secondarily to that, if you say, $20 pays for, a cat for a week or something like that, if someone gives that $20, that's not restricted funding.
Yep. So here's my language, my caveat. I always like to say, use the word like. Your gift will help animals like so-and-so get their spay and neuter. Your animals will help so-and-so, and you will help animals like so-and-so get what they need to medical care. That word like all of a sudden opens up that gift so that you can use it for whatever you need. Because if you do tell someone you are helping Jessie with her cat to get spayed today, it has to go to Jessie to help her cat get spayed today. But if you said your gift goes to people like Jessie, all of a sudden you open it up to help people in similar situations with similar animal needs. That one little word.
Then let's also bounce to the next topic of the 1, 10, 1,000.
Yes.
I'm on board with the 1, got it. The 10, I got it. The 1,000, the leaky bucket. So a lot of donors come and go. And so when you're saying 1,000 donors, I've read things like 20% of donors come and go over the course of a year. So you're not static with that 1,000. You're trying to fill that back up again all the time with new donor recruitment. I don't know if that's the right word. Acquisition, I guess it is, donor acquisition. And then there's donor retention. So the monthly giving program is big with the donor retention world. But that 1,000 to me seems like that's the hardest piece of actually those 3 things.
It's totally. There was one graphic I showed where the minute an ask is made, you have to continue the retention period. It's the thank you, it's the sharing the impact, it's all that. That is just as important. And yes, donors come and go. So donor acquisition, meaning bringing on new donors, is something that you'll have to do every day all throughout the year. Having something as simple on your website as saying, sign up here for our newsletter. If that newsletter is going out once a month, that's a perfect way to engage people who just want to know what you're doing. Because one day when you're asking for money and you have a campaign appeal, it's called, that appeal is not going to replace a newsletter, but it's going to be something else that you're sending out to the same exact database. So every month they're getting some feel-good news, and then boom, all of a sudden you're asking them for something. Okay, great. You want them to sign up for your newsletter. You want to get them to your website. You want them on your email list.
So a question out there, do you work with individuals who are not 501c3 organizations?
So at Get Fully Funded, we primarily work with individuals who are already 501c3s. We've definitely worked with some organizations to get grant or get funding ready. Obviously, you have to make sure that you've got all of your paperwork in line to accept donations. So when I work with individuals who are not 501c3 or groups, I'm trying to help them figure out, is there someone else doing similar work that they can add on to? My volunteer work is at a dog rescue. We've had groups come to us and even say, hey, we work with homeless dogs, for example, or homeless individuals, unsheltered individuals who have dogs. Can you help us? Sure, let's see how we help them too. They don't necessarily need a 501c3 if we can bring them under our umbrella. So what I encourage a lot of people to do is find someone else doing similar work. Help them. See if you want to do this full time. Fundraising is not easy. Starting a nonprofit is not easy. It is a business. The only difference is a tax status. That's the only difference. So I know many people who start nonprofits thinking the money's going to roll in. It's not. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes effort, it takes due diligence.
Hmm. I'm running through the questions here. Let's see here. There was a grants question. When you're talking about your fundraising plan, and there are some questions in there I might not get to, but when you're talking about fundraising plan, what you have there is almost a schedule, right? It's a calendar, what you're showing. The plan goes underneath those layers. So
Correct.
there's the fundraising calendar. So I used to always be like, oh, I'm so proud. I have a fundraising plan. And it was like I presented my board of directors a calendar. The fur ball is going to be here. The strut's going to be here. Our yard sale's going to be over here. Yes, I understand. I'm doing way too many events. I get it. I did not take the course when I was doing this. Anyway, so, we had the whole thing. And then I would overlay it with my grant application is due here and my other grant application is due here. And then we developed the world with social media and that kind of thing. But that was like a calendar. And then there's the layers underneath, like, okay, there's a lot to running an event. So there's like the plan for that event. Then there's the plan for the appeal. There's the plan for the grant writing. So in a way, it's much deeper than that one piece of paper.
Absolutely. When people are just starting, I like to use that calendar because it helps you understand and get a picture of what's happening. I've seen people do that and be like, oh my gosh, no wonder I'm exhausted in March. I have 7 fundraisers happening in March. Oh, well, can we space those out, and or are all 7 even bringing in money? Because if they're not, why are we doing it? And for some people, it's very hard to sit back and kind of calendar things out and figure out where are the priorities. That visual aspect just opens people's eyes. But yes, with every event you're doing, with every time you're asking for money, even putting together a newsletter, I know it takes time. But having that visual plan will help you figure out what are you prioritizing and what needs to go away. So correct, it's not just that, but if you're starting off, put it on that visual calendar and see what you're doing, see where your stresses are, and maybe see if that tells you why, because you're very busy around a certain time of the year.
Right. And I'm going to say, as a tip, is if you can batch it, or if you can repurpose it. So if you have a blog or a place on your website where you put articles or resources, take that, make that a key article in one of your newsletters, make it a social media post, take it and just use it again and again and again. You don't have to just be one and done. Use it again and schedule it. So go, okay, I'm going to schedule this for 4 quarters, however far out they let you schedule it or whatever. And I do this with the podcast. Everybody knows this. I record the podcast like 4 to 6 months in advance, and I record 4 to 6 podcasts in a day. And so I do the batch work. That can be done with fundraising for sure. I mean, that's why I spent 80% of my time on fundraising and administration for MRFRS when I was running it, is because I could batch work. I could put things together. I could plan ahead. I could work at my own schedule. If I wasn't feeling up to it, I could pretty much take a sick day, other than when the fur ball was happening and you have to show up in person. And that's why I like virtual events. But, you could, batch it. So don't think like, oh my gosh, it's another newsletter. Oh, you can do 12 newsletters, in a week. I had a friend who did all of her grant writing between Christmas and New Year's. She shut her spay neuter clinic down. Everybody took a holiday, and she went home and wrote grant applications for the whole year in that week and a half period. So you can control your time and work it in a way so that it doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, it's another thing on my head today.
Totally. And that same story you can share on social media over and over. You can also share updates if you have updates in a certain situation. And with donors as well. I can't tell you how many times I use the same story with 100 donors. They're not going to hear it from anybody else. So I call them, I email them, I text them the story, the success story. You can use that in so many ways, a blog post, a story, whatever it may be. Absolutely, hands down. Think
Mhm.
smarter, not harder. We're human, we're doing our best, and people just want you to be real and human with them and we're not striving for perfection. We're striving to save lives, and let's focus on our mission.
Right. And I would hesitate to say, be true to who you are. Don't overthink. And like, you know what? On the case where there's like $120 to spay, neuter a cat, just be real. This is what we're faced with. We have a veterinary shortage. We have mental health issues. We have technician shortage. We are faced with unprecedented financial challenges. And you know what? If it's stressing you out to try and figure out a different core number, then just go with what you've got and get the story out there. Put a picture of a big fat tomcat with jowls and whatever, and we all know he's like the friendliest FIV positive cat out there. But get the face out there and just say, don't you want to get Tom neutered, right? Don't you want to do that? And even though it's $120, it's $120 and it needs to happen. And you know what? Just you got to ask. You've just got to get it out there and ask. And if it doesn't work, no harm, no foul.
Totally. Totally. And yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I would say is just remember to share impact. Remember that when we're human, we're tugged by emotions, we're emotional beings. We want to do good. Everyone wants to do good in this world. Give them a reason to do good. Share a picture, share a story, and tell them how they can make this world a better place, and focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on the fact of that what you're going to do in the end. It's going to make this world, their community, a better place, and why. And don't focus on you. It's not personal. It's about the animals you're trying to help.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Excellent. Jessie, I want to thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really appreciate it. Great questions. There are